You grew up sharing the same kitchen table, same laughter echoing down the hallway, same silent rules of family. We protect each other, we show up, we don't betray blood. But somewhere along the line, something changed. It wasn't sudden, not like a car crash. It was slow, a quiet forgetting, a harsh word, a missed call when you needed them most. Then one day you realized your sibling was no longer your safe place. They were the storm. And the worst part, you still loved them. That's what makes betrayal from a sibling so hard to name. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't always come with fists, it comes with silence, with cold shoulders at the dinner table, with manipulation dressed as concern. Most people don't talk about it. They swallow the pain. They say, that's just family. But let me tell you something Marcus Aurelius knew, and you must remember. Even family must earn their place in your peace. In this video, we'll explore 7 betrayals from siblings that cut deep, and that no Stoic, no matter how forgiving, should ever ignore. Because yes, Stoicism teaches us to control our emotions, to respond instead of react. But it never tells us to endure mistreatment, especially from those who should have protected us. It tells us to respect ourselves enough to draw a line, even if that line means walking away. This isn't about bitterness. It's about clarity. It's about learning to live with dignity in a world where even family can wound you. And if any part of your story includes a sibling who used your kindness, turned others against you, or disappeared when you needed them most, then this video is for you. But more importantly, this channel is for you. At the Stoic philosophy, we don't sugarcoat pain. We look it in the eye, we name it. And then, through ancient wisdom and lived truth, we begin to rise above it. So if you're ready to reclaim your peace, to build a stronger, calmer, wiser mind in the face of life's hardest lessons, subscribe now, because what comes next isn't just information, it's transformation. Let's begin. Not all wounds leave scars on the skin. Some live in the silence between phone calls, in the unspoken words that hang heavy during holiday dinners, in the ache you feel when you realize your sibling has become a stranger, or worse, an enemy wearing a familiar face. You see, when betrayal comes from a colleague or friend, we can rationalize it. We create distance, we set boundaries, we move on. But when it comes from a sibling, someone who shares your history, your roots, your family stories, it cuts deeper than logic can reach. It questions everything you once believed about loyalty, love, and the meaning of home. Maybe it started with small things. They didn't show up for your birthday. They borrowed money and never paid it back. They gossiped about you to the family, twisted your words, and made you look like the problem. Maybe they were never there when your life was falling apart, not at the hospital, not at the funeral, not when you were lying awake, wondering how the person who grew up in the same house could care so little. And still, you tried to forgive. You told yourself, that's just how they are. You kept the door open. You kept hoping. But with each new disappointment, a quiet truth grew louder inside you. This isn't love. This isn't respect. This isn't what family is supposed to feel like. Stoic philosophers understood this well. They lived in a world of duty, honor, and obligation, but they also knew the danger of keeping toxic bonds for the sake of appearances. Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." What does that mean? It means pain becomes a pattern when we let it repeat. It means we're not weak for feeling hurt, but we're unwise if we keep returning to the same fire expecting not to get burned. And here's the real problem. Society tells you to forgive everything, that family is family, that you'll regret walking away. But Stoicism says otherwise. It says, protect your peace. It says, virtue is not measured by how much pain you can endure, but by how much truth you're willing to face. You can't build a peaceful life while pretending betrayal didn't happen. You can't become emotionally free while denying that someone you loved chose to hurt you. The challenge is not in identifying the betrayal. It's in accepting that it was betrayal, and then having the courage to act, even when the world says you're being cold or unforgiving. That's what this video is here to help you do, to name the pain, to understand it, and to give you the Stoic tools to stop carrying guilt that was never yours in the first place. Because until you do, you'll keep reliving the same story, same phone call, same argument, same disappointment. But this time, you're not here to repeat the past. You're here to reclaim your power, to honor your own emotional dignity, and to finally say, "This ends with me." Now let's explore the 7 betrayals no Stoic should ever overlook, and why recognizing them just might be the beginning of your healing. The silent fractures that redefined family. Betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it arrives dressed in politeness, in habit, in tradition. When it comes from a sibling, the pain rarely begins with one grand explosion. More often, it's a slow unraveling, a series of disappointments that gradually transform the bond from one of trust into one of quiet tension. In this section, we'll dive into 7 specific kinds of sibling betrayals that often go unspoken, unacknowledged, and unforgiven. Each one leaves a different kind of scar, and each one is a lesson in clarity, boundaries, and emotional freedom. Through a Stoic lens, we will not only identify these betrayals but also understand why they're so damaging and how we can begin to heal without denying the truth. These are the fractures that, once named, give you the courage to stop bleeding for the sake of family. Part 1. They compete, not connect. You didn't sign up for a rivalry. You were hoping for a teammate. Growing up, maybe it started with simple things. Who got the bigger slice of cake? Who ran faster in the backyard? Who brought home the better report card? It was childhood. Competitive, yes, but innocent. But now you're in your 40s, 50s, or even 60s, and somehow the competition never ended. Your siblings still keep score. When you bought your first home, they found a way to mention theirs was bigger. When your child graduated, they said, "Well, my son got a scholarship too." When you lost weight, healed, moved on, they made jokes masked in sarcasm. "Look at you trying to be all enlightened now." You tried not to take it personally. You smiled. You changed the subject. You told yourself, "They're just insecure. Let it go." But slowly you realized this wasn't insecurity. This was a pattern, a deep, unspoken competition for love, for recognition, for being seen. And it never had anything to do with cake or grades or success. It had to do with something much older and much sadder. Because when a sibling views your growth as a threat, what they're really saying is, there isn't enough space for both of us to be okay. That's not love, that's scarcity. A Stoic understands that true strength is inward. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. And when your thoughts are constantly filtered through someone else's envy, joy becomes fragile. You begin to shrink your light. You downplay your wins. You stop sharing your life, not because you want to hide, but because you're tired of being shadowboxed by someone who should have stood beside you. And it hurts, not because you need their approval, you're too grown for that, but because you wanted to celebrate with them, not defend yourself from them. Stoicism doesn't tell us to cut people off at the first offense. It teaches endurance, patience, self-control, but it also teaches clarity. And clarity, in this case, means recognizing when someone isn't relating to you, they're ranking you, and no bond, not even one forged in childhood, can survive when every interaction feels like a silent battle. So what do? You stop playing the game. You stop offering your joy to someone who only sees it as a scoreboard. You stop explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. You create peace by stepping out of the contest, because peace was never going to be found inside it. And here's the deeper truth. You don't owe anyone the version of yourself that makes them feel more comfortable by being less. Your job is not to dim your light so others can feel tall in the dark. Your job is to live in alignment with truth, virtue, and inner calm. Even if your own sibling chooses comparison over connection, forgiveness doesn't mean reunion. It means releasing the burden of trying to win someone's love by losing yourself. That's not stoicism, that's slavery. And you were made for better. Part 2. They disrespect your boundaries and laugh about it. It always starts small. They borrow something without asking. They interrupt your stories with their own. They show up uninvited, stay longer than welcome, say things that sting. And when you finally speak up, they laugh. Come on, don't be so sensitive. It's just a joke. You've changed. You used to be cool. What they call teasing, you feel as trespassing. But the deeper betrayal isn't just in their words, it's in their refusal to acknowledge your limits. Boundaries are how we tell the world. This is what I need to feel safe. This is what I need to feel respected. They're not walls. They're fences with gates. Gates that open for love and close for harm. But with certain siblings, every no you express becomes a challenge they're determined to bulldoze. They make you feel guilty for saying you're tired. They treat your silence as an invitation. They show up with old stories, old jokes, old roles, as if your growth is an inconvenience they'd rather ignore. And when you finally push back, they make you the villain in the comedy they're writing about your life. This is no longer family, this is performance. And you've been cast as the uptight one for having the audacity to heal. The Stoics taught us not to be reactive, but never to be passive. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But what about when the outside event is a person you can't completely avoid? What if it's someone who carries your childhood, your parents' phone number, and your history? This is when modern Stoicism becomes more than theory. It becomes practice. You learn to say no without explaining. You learn to pause before reacting. You learn to choose calm over control, but firmness over silence. Because here's the truth no one tells you when it comes to family. Boundaries aren't betrayals. They're the beginning of honesty. You set them not because you hate someone, but because you're done hating yourself after every interaction. You set them not to punish, but to protect the space you've spent years rebuilding inside of you. And yes, it will confuse them. They'll say you're cold. They'll say you're distant. But that's only because the version of you who tolerated everything is gone. The new you, the one who respects your time, energy, and peace, will feel unfamiliar to those who benefited from the old version. Let them adjust, or don't. That part isn't your responsibility. What is your responsibility is what Seneca called self-preservation of the mind, a commitment to truth, to balance, to internal freedom. And no matter how many family photos you've shared, no matter how many years you laughed at their jokes that cut too close, you're not obligated to keep bleeding just to make them comfortable. You don't have to keep the door wide open for someone who never wipes their feet before entering your life. You can still love them, you can still wish them well, but from a distance, that respects your dignity too. And if they laugh, let them. Because the Stoic doesn't live to please others. He lives in alignment with reason, and reason knows this. You cannot find peace while constantly explaining why you deserve it. Part 3. They make you the villain in the family story. Every family has stories, the funny ones we tell at holidays, the ones that get passed down like heirlooms, the ones that define who's the favorite, who's the smart one, who's difficult. But what happens when the version of you in those stories isn't you? What happens when your sibling begins to recast you? not as the person you are, but as the villain they need you to be. It starts with a sentence here and there. Well, you know how she always overreacts. I mean, he was never really there for Mom. That's just how they are, cold, distant. At first, you brush it off. You tell yourself they don't mean anything by it. You assume others will see through it. But slowly, the narrative builds. They twist moments, take your worst day and turn it into your only trait. They weaponize your silence, your boundaries, your pain, and reshape them as selfishness, ego, or abandonment. And worst of all, they tell it with such charm, with such practiced sighs and tilted heads, that even those closest to you start to believe it. Now, you're not just dealing with your sibling's betrayal, you're defending your character in a courtroom where you never got to speak. And that kind of betrayal? It doesn't just bruise your feelings, it bruises your name. The Stoics warned us about this. Epictetus said, "If evil is spoken of you and it be true, correct yourself. If it be a lie, laugh at it." But let's be honest, when it comes from your own blood, it's hard to laugh. It's hard to be stoic when your reputation is being quietly dismantled at family gatherings you're not even invited to anymore. It's hard not to feel angry, not to feel betrayed, because you didn't ask for this role. You didn't audition to be the scapegoat in their drama. You simply chose to grow, to heal, and for that, they labeled you cold. You said no and became selfish. You stopped calling and became the one who abandoned the family. This is the betrayal of false storytelling. It's not about lies shouted, it's about narratives whispered so often, so convincingly, that they become accepted truth. And what do the Stoics tell us to do when others twist the truth? They tell us to live our virtue louder than the lies. Seneca wrote, "A good character, when established, is not easily overthrown." Which means your job isn't to chase down every rumor or correct every version of you floating in someone else's mind. Your job is to live in such alignment with truth, with integrity, that even when they hear the story, they start to question the storyteller, because time has a way of revealing intention, and those who lie for attention eventually expose their emptiness. So what do? You let go of the need to be understood by people who benefit from misunderstanding you. You stop trying to explain yourself to those who've already decided who you are, and you find peace not in being liked, but in being honest, even if it means being the villain in their story, as long as you're the hero on your own. You keep showing up with calmness. You keep choosing dignity over drama, and you remember they can rewrite the family myth, but they don't get to rewrite your truth. One day the stories will fall apart, the masks will slip, and the people who mattered will see what was always there. Until then, stand tall, live well, and never trade your integrity for an invitation to a table that serves nothing but gossip. Part 4, they take without giving, emotionally, financially, spiritually. They always needed something, a ride, a loan, a place to stay, advice, a shoulder, your time, your money, your presence. And at first, you gave it gladly, because that's what family does. That's what you do. You've always been the strong one, the dependable one, the quiet anchor, and for a while, it felt good, it felt right, until one day you realized the giving never stopped, and the receiving never came. Birthdays were forgotten, holidays skipped, not even a thank you card when you pulled them out of their 4th crisis in 5 years, and still, they asked for more. When you finally said no, even gently, the shift was instant. You became selfish, you were cold. They just needed a little help, and you couldn't even do that. But it was never just help, was it? It was a slow drain, emotionally, financially, spiritually. They didn't just want support, they wanted access to your energy, your labor, your guilt. And if you didn't give it willingly, they'd try to shame it out of you. This is one of the most overlooked betrayals between siblings, not because it's loud or violent, but because it wears the face of need. And if you grew up being the helper, the fixer, the responsible one, you became their supply. And the truth is hard to say out loud. They love what you do for them more than they love you. Stoicism has much to say about this kind of dynamic. Seneca warned us clearly, "He who gives only to be praised has already been paid." But what about those who only take without giving anything back? That's not family, that's imbalance, that's not love, that's emotional extraction. And when it becomes a pattern, year after year, request after request, it becomes abuse wrapped in obligation. The Stoics believed in generosity, yes, but they believed in something more, self-respect. They believed virtue begins with how you govern your soul. And part of that governance is knowing when you're being used. So what does this betrayal look like? It's them calling you only when their life is on fire, never when they just want to check in. It's always being the emotional sponge, listening to their problems for hours, and then getting hung up on when you bring up your own. It's the casual way they assume your time belongs to them. It's guilt trips, the passive-aggressive comments, the silent treatments when you set limits. They want you to be generous, but not empowered. They want your help, but not your boundaries. They want your presence, but without the inconvenience of having to show up for you in return. And this is the core of it. They want access without responsibility. And Stoicism tells us plainly that this kind of relationship is unsustainable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." You've been one. You've shown up again and again. But at some point, showing up for them means abandoning yourself. And that is the line Stoicism helps you draw. This isn't about revenge or resentment. It's about reclaiming balance. It's about seeing clearly. When someone only comes to you with open hands but never open hearts, you are not in a relationship. You are in a role, and roles can be retired. So what can you do? You stop waiting for them to notice your exhaustion. You stop hoping they'll say thank you. You stop trying to earn the kind of love that doesn't keep receipts. You say no and mean it. You create distance and protect it. You give without guilt, and when you don't give, you feel no shame. Because giving is only generous when it's free, and love is only real when it's mutual. Forgiveness doesn't mean funding their chaos. Compassion doesn't mean collapsing for their comfort. You are allowed to stop the bleeding, not out of anger, but out of wisdom. Because the most stoic thing you can do for someone who only takes is to stop giving and start living. Part 5. They disappear when the pain gets real. They were there for the parties, the family dinners, the easy laughter, the lighthearted jokes. But when the storm hit, when your world cracked open, they vanished. Not with cruelty, not even with conflict. They just disappeared. Maybe it was when your marriage collapsed. Maybe when you got that diagnosis. Maybe it was the year you couldn't afford Christmas gifts, or the night you sat crying on the bathroom floor after burying mom. You waited for their call. You checked your messages. You thought, surely they'll reach out. They know this is hard. They're my sibling, after all. But silence became the loudest betrayal. And that's when the truth hit you. They don't know how to sit with pain they didn't cause and can't fix. And worse, maybe they don't want to. Because being close to you during your hardest moment would require something real. Presence, vulnerability, emotional labor. And they've never been good at that. They joke when things get heavy. They change the subject when you start to cry. They ghost when your life no longer fits the easy version of you they're comfortable with. And that cuts deep, because you didn't need solutions. You just needed someone who wouldn't run, but they ran. And in that moment, the betrayal isn't about what they did. It's about what they refused to do. Be there. Presence. That's it. Not gifts. Not advice. Not even words. just someone sitting beside you in the wreckage of life, refusing to flinch. But they couldn't give you that, because your pain made them uncomfortable, because your grief reminded them of theirs, because they didn't know what to say, and instead of saying something, they chose nothing. And that's the part that haunts you. They left you when you needed the opposite of abandonment. The Stoics teach us to accept what we cannot control, but they also teach us to recognize what is real. Epictetus once said, "It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgments concerning them. And here's the judgment we must face. Someone who only walks with you in the sunshine is not your companion. A true sibling, the kind your younger self thought you had, is someone who steps into your darkness and lights a candle, even if their hands are shaking." But they didn't. So you walked alone. You got through the funeral. You raised the kids. You fought the illness. You rebuilt your life from the rubble. And when things started looking better, maybe, just maybe, they reappeared, smiling, acting like nothing had happened, cracking jokes, sending memes, asking, "How have you been?" And part of you wanted to scream, to say, "Where were you when I needed you the most?" But instead, you smiled, you played along, because that's what you do. But inside, something had shifted, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You stopped expecting depth from shallow wells. You stopped asking rain from skies that never carried clouds. You stopped hoping the people who disappeared in your pain would suddenly become the ones who deserved to witness your healing. And that is freedom. Because forgiveness doesn't mean reunion. Forgiveness means release. You don't owe anyone your story, especially the chapters they refuse to read. Seneca reminded us, "A wise man is content with himself." You learn to be content with your own resilience, with your scars, with your survival. You discovered strength in solitude, and that discovery, it was forged in the silence of their absence. So now, when they come around only for the celebrations, the good news, the easy moments, you welcome them politely, but you no longer invite them into your inner life. Because that space is sacred now. It belongs to those who show up when things fall apart, not just when things look pretty. This betrayal, the betrayal of abandonment during suffering, is quiet, but it is profound. And once it happens, the bond is never the same. That's not cruelty, that's evolution. You grew, they hid, and now you walk forward, stoic, still scarred and sovereign. Part 6. They compete, not celebrate. At first, it felt subtle, the way they'd changed the subject when you shared good news, the way their tone flattened when you mentioned a promotion, a milestone, a moment of joy. It wasn't hatred, it wasn't open jealousy, it was detachment, discomfort, sometimes even dismissal, like your wins were threats, like your light somehow dimmed theirs. And that hurt more than you expected, because this was your sibling, the person who knew where you came from, who shared your childhood, your struggle, your story. But somehow, instead of growing closer as you succeeded, they started keeping score. Your happiness became their insecurity. You bought a house. They brought up how theirs was in a better neighborhood. You shared your child's graduation photo. They mentioned their kid's scholarship. You hit a personal goal. They didn't say congratulations. They said, must be nice. And with each interaction, the invisible scoreboard grew taller, louder, colder. It wasn't about love anymore. It was about position. And suddenly family gatherings felt like battlegrounds, not with weapons, but with passive jabs, backhanded compliments, condescending laughter, quick glances when others praised you as if your success was an offense. You thought, why does it feel like I'm being punished for thriving? The truth? You triggered something in them that they never learned to face. Their regrets, their comparisons, their unhealed wounds. Your growth reminded them of their stagnation. Your peace reminded them of their chaos. Your fulfillment reminded them of the dreams they abandoned. So instead of celebrating you, they started competing with you, even if you weren't playing. That's the part people miss. You never wanted a competition. You wanted connection. You wanted to bring them with you, to share the joy, the journey, the harvest. But they brought envy to a table meant for celebration. And when that happens, something ancient inside you breaks. Because we're wired to seek validation from those closest to us. And when they can't give it, it feels like you're chasing approval in a hall of mirrors. You wonder, is something wrong with me for wanting them to be proud? Am I selfish for feeling hurt by their silence? The Stoics offer clarity here. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." So let's reframe this betrayal, not as your loss, but as their limitation. Their inability to celebrate you is not your burden to carry. It's their own wound, unhealed. Their own identity, unanchored. Their own self-worth, built on shaky ground. A mature soul celebrates others because it sees no threat in someone else's light. It understands that joy is not a limited resource, but insecure people believe love is a pie. If you get a slice, they get less. So instead of applauding, they withdraw, they critique, they compare, and the cruel irony, they don't even win anything in this unspoken competition. They just miss out on intimacy. While you were building bridges, they were measuring distances. While you reached for connection, they reached for comparison. So now you stand on your mountaintop, alone. Not because you wanted to be, but because they refused to climb with you. And in that isolation, a strange kind of clarity emerges. Some people are not angry you left them behind. They're angry you didn't stay small with them. The celebration they couldn't give you, you learned to give it to yourself, to build your own joy, to clap for yourself in empty rooms, because maturity is celebrating even when no one shows up to the party. And Stoicism is understanding that external applause is temporary, but inner harmony is eternal. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." And what many competing siblings crave isn't even your success. It's your peace, your ability to be content without competing, your calm in a world obsessed with comparison. So now you don't play the game, you don't take the bait, you don't shrink to fit their comfort. You shine quietly, celebrate inwardly, build steadily, and you watch them not with bitterness, but with compassion, because you know those who compete when they could have celebrated are already losing something deeper than any trophy. They're losing you, and the version of love that only grows when both people rise together. Part 7, they twist the truth to protect their image. It didn't start with a lie, it started with a half-truth, a version of the story that made them look better and you look worse. A casual comment at a family gathering, a twisted retelling of a fight, a whisper behind closed doors that somehow spread like wildfire. And before you knew it, you became the villain in their story. You were too sensitive. You overreacted. You always had a problem with them. Except, you remember the truth differently. You remember the night they crossed a line, emotionally, financially, spiritually. You remember the silence that followed, the betrayal that broke something sacred. But instead of owning their part, they rewrote the script, not just to others, but to themselves. Because facing the truth would mean admitting they hurt someone who loved them. And that's too heavy a weight for a fragile ego, so they distort it. They add details that never happened. They leave out the parts that make them look cruel, selfish, or cowardly. And in doing so, they protect their image at the cost of integrity. This is the kind of betrayal that doesn't scream. It simmers. It circulates. It stains your reputation in places you don't even know exist. You find out months later. Someone treats you differently. Someone pulls away. You ask why, and they say, "I heard you did something unforgivable." But they weren't there. They only heard one side, and that side came from someone you once trusted to stand beside you, not speak against you. It cuts deep, not just because they lied, but because they lied with confidence. They weaponized their version of events to build sympathy, control the narrative, and maintain their place in the family hierarchy. And you're left holding the truth quietly, because you don't want to stoop to their level, because you believe in dignity, because the people who truly matter, they'll see. But let's be honest, it still hurts to be misrepresented, to be judged unfairly, to have your silence mistaken for guilt, while their noise gets rewarded with belief. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And that is the hard path, because every part of you wants to defend yourself, to expose their lies, to prove you were right, but you don't. Not because you're weak, but because you've grown stronger than the game they're playing. You realize this. People who twist the truth are terrified of facing it. They live in fear that the mirror might crack, that their carefully crafted image might shatter, that people might finally see the brokenness behind their charm, their smiles, their concerned tones. So they lie, not just to others, but to survive within themselves. That's not your burden to carry. Your burden is grief. Grieving the sibling you thought you had. The one who'd protect your name, not poison it. The one who'd say, "We had our issues, but they don't deserve this." Instead, they chose preservation over reconciliation. And that choice, that's their legacy, not yours. The Stoics would tell us, let others speak ill of you. It is not within your control, but how you respond, that is always yours. So you respond with silence, with a straight back, with a life lived honestly, even if it's misunderstood. You stop chasing explanations. You stop defending yourself in rooms you were never invited into. You stop needing everyone to get it. Because you get it. You were there. You remember what really happened. And the truth, it doesn't need an audience. It needs peace. And over time, the truth has a strange way of resurfacing. Maybe not today, maybe not in this family, maybe not in a way that ever clears your name in public. But truth always echoes longer than lies. One day, when the dust settles and the masks fall, people will ask themselves, why did they lie? Why did they need to twist the story so much? And in that moment, clarity will rise. Until then, you live your life in truth. You write your own story, not to compete, not to accuse, but to heal. Because you're not in the business of protecting your image. You're in the business of protecting your soul. That's what Stoicism demands. That's what peace requires. That's what healing looks like. When the mask finally falls, there comes a moment in every life when clarity arrives, not in soft whispers, but in crashing silence. When you no longer seek apologies, when you stop searching for explanations, and when the illusions you once held so dear finally break like glass underfoot. This is the moment the mask falls, and you see your sibling, not as who they should have been, but as who they've chosen to be. For many, betrayal by a sibling is one of the most disorienting emotional earthquakes of a lifetime. Because in childhood, you weren't just two people under one roof. You were co-conspirators in chaos. You shared bedtime secrets, fought over toys, whispered under blankets, and defended each other from the shadows of the world. That bond felt unbreakable. And that's what makes betrayal from a sibling so soul-deep. Because it doesn't just hurt, it rewrites your past. The climax of this journey isn't a confrontation. It's not a dramatic family dinner or a teary apology. No, the real climax is internal. It's the moment you no longer confuse flesh and blood with loyalty and truth. It's when you realize they may share your blood, but not your values, not your integrity, not your heart. Let's be clear, this isn't about vengeance or anger. The Stoics remind us, it is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. This moment of clarity isn't meant to punish your sibling. It is meant to liberate you. Liberate you from false hope. Liberate you from the loop of trying to fix someone who has no interest in changing. Liberate you from blaming yourself for the wreckage they left behind. In this climax, forgiveness transforms. It's no longer something you give to them. It's something you give to yourself. Not as permission to forget, but as the final nail sealing the emotional coffin of what will never be. You stop negotiating your worth for their validation. You stop explaining your pain to people who make a sport of denying it. You stop asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and start stating, "This is who they are." In this powerful moment, the path becomes clearer. You are not heartless for protecting yourself. You are not cruel for creating distance. You are not bitter for remembering what they want you to forget. You are finally free. This is not a fairy tale. There may be no reconciliation, no tearful embrace, and that's okay. Because sometimes the greatest peace isn't found in repairing broken relationships. It's found in reclaiming your own peace, piece by piece. That's the gift of Stoic clarity. Not the ability to undo pain, but the courage to see it clearly, name it honestly, and walk away with your soul intact. And in that stillness, that silence, after the mask has fallen, you find something greater than justice. You find yourself. Conclusion: the price of peace and the power of knowing betrayal by a sibling isn't just another wound. It's a break in the foundation of what we once believed was safe, eternal, and sacred. It's the kind of pain that doesn't just sting, it echoes. In your quiet moments, in family photos, in memories that now feel stained. But here's what life and Stoic philosophy teaches us. Not all bonds are meant to last, even those sealed by blood. Throughout this journey, we've walked through the shadows of sibling betrayals, the lies, the silences, the manipulation, the absence when you needed presence. We've explored the quiet cruelties that too often go unnamed because they're still family. But silence doesn't heal, and pretending doesn't protect. What heals is truth. The Stoics would not tell you to suppress your pain. They would tell you to observe it, learn from it, and rise with it. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Your power lies in how you respond, not in trying to control someone else's choices. If your sibling has taken from you your peace, your trust, your dignity, you don't owe them endless chances. You owe yourself protection, you owe yourself clarity, and above all, you owe yourself peace. This peace may come with a cost. Distance, grief, letting go of the fantasy that your family will become what it never was. But what you gain is far greater. A life built on reality, resilience, and self-respect. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most powerful outcome of all. So hold the truth gently but firmly. Carry your lessons forward and remember, you didn't break the bond. You just finally stopped bleeding for it. Your story doesn't end in betrayal. It begins in truth. Step forward with strength and wisdom. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, if it reminded you of a hurt you've carried too long, or gave you the strength to finally name it, then know this: you are not alone, and you are not powerless. There are more stories, more truths, and more wisdom waiting for you on this journey. On the Stoic Philosophy channel, we dive deep into the lessons of ancient Stoicism to face modern pain with courage, clarity, and calm. From emotional boundaries to inner peace, from family wounds to personal growth. This channel is a space for your healing and transformation. I invite you to continue your journey with us. Watch the next video in this series, or explore our collection on topics like resilience, detachment, and forgiveness through a Stoic lens. You'll find guidance that speaks directly to your lived experience, not in abstract quotes, but in real, grounded truths. that empower you to live more fully. Don't forget to subscribe to The Stoic Philosophy. Turn on notifications so you never miss a video that could offer the exact insight you need at exactly the right time. Thank you truly for spending your time with this video. Your presence here means more than you know. May you walk forward with a lighter heart, a sharper mind, and the peace that comes from standing in your truth. Wishing you wisdom, strength, and serenity always.
Thank you for watching this video here on the Stoic Philosophy. If you found value in this, I invite you to explore more videos on the channel. There's so much more wisdom to uncover. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next one. Thanks again for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.